starting to feel the strain. Was it a bicycle? What is wrong with my brain? Is it the end of me? No, I must still believe. So I'm still alive, you see. Heck yeah, now I'm on my way. But let's stay focused, there's still a job in hand that we must do. Cameras start to click, we know what create is something new. So go Marty and Sarah and Mark and Matt, Owen, Smitty, McCrilly and Jamie Lane in the Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. Stop the clock, we're done, we're rolling. Sound the horn and sing that we are going. 27 hours, that is the time. So let's hop on the bus and let it shine. Shine, 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 shine. Say sha la 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 la, 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 sha la 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 la. Good afternoon, folks. You are very welcome to Bandido Talks. Well, it's almost March the 17th. Let's get straight into this, folks. You're probably thinking, the Bandido is a big, walking, talking contradiction. Isn't that what you're thinking? Because for those of you who saw one of the Bandido's most recent live shows, the Bandido had a recent beef that he needed to air out in public here on the channel. His beef with alcohol consumers. We did an episode very recently, in the last week or so, maybe the last 2 weeks, where the Bandido talked all about his beef with people who consume alcohol. And the long and short of it was, the Bandido sees alcohol consumers as people who willingly place themselves into a state of distortion. In other words, they are distorted liabilities. Now, you would need to watch the full show to understand why the Bandido comes to this conclusion about alcohol consumers. That's up to you to go and watch that live show. But you see, here's the thing. It's March the 17th tomorrow. What happens across the world, but particularly here in Ireland, on March the 17th? That is correct, St. Patrick's Day. And for those of you of my enormous audience of 56 subscribers, for my enormous audience who has been paying attention to the recent live shows, and in particular to that live show, exploring my beef with alcohol consumers, you may be thinking, quite legitimately, why is the Bandido going to do a show talking about why St. Patrick's Day is a good thing? This makes no sense. The Bandido is contradicting himself. One minute he's talking about his beef with alcohol consumers, now he seems to be endorsing St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day is the epitome of what? People getting drunk. How could the Bandido support St. Patrick's Day, given that he's just done a big long live show about his beef with alcohol consumers? And you may be thinking that the Bandido is a contradiction. He's just the human form of a contradiction. But you see, I said it in the description of our show today. You, if you are thinking that, you need to unwind your knickers. Untwist yourself out of this pretzel and hear the Bandido out. Because there isn't a contradiction here. I do support St. Patrick's Day. And there's a reason why I support it. Because, folks, there's something very important that we need to understand in life. Seldom do we agree with somebody or something 100%. It really doesn't happen very often where we are 100% in agreement with someone or something that's happening in the world. There will always be a certain percentage of disagreement between me and someone else, or between me and some other thing. Seldom in this life do worldviews completely align. There will always be some disagreement between people and between people and the events that happen in the world. This is normal and it is natural. There are so many people on the planet, folks. So many different personalities. There are so many things happening on the planet. There's just such a diversity of activities, of humans, that it would be impossible for me to 100% agree with all of this. And so it's important to realize this in life. You're very seldom going to be 100% in agreement with anything or anyone. There will always be little aspects to certain people or certain things where you will look and say, yeah, well, you know, I like 90% of what I'm seeing and hearing, but there's this 10% that, you know, it's just, I don't completely get on board with this 10%, but 90% is good. And that's the way life is, folks. Sometimes it's 90% agreement, 10% disagreement. Sometimes it could be 60-40. Maybe it's the reverse. 30% agreement, 70% disagreement. This is normal and natural, folks. It happens in all of our interactions with people and how we interact with different things that happen around us. And there's no problem with this. It doesn't mean that you are contradicting yourself. Sure, me, if we're talking about Mr. Bandido, I've already expressed my beef with alcohol consumers. You can go watch that episode. It's a recent episode on the channel. And I'm very aware that St. Patrick's Day is a day where people get extremely drunk. In fact, people feel like they have the green light. They have the go-ahead to get particularly drunk. They book days off work in anticipation of how drunk they are going to be and how lousy they will feel after all of their daytime and nocturnal activities. So I know this. I know that St. Patrick's Day represents a lot of alcohol consumption. That is true. And do I agree with all of this alcohol consumption? Would I prefer if there weren't a whole bunch of distorted liabilities walking around me? Well, yes, in an ideal world, I would prefer that there was no alcohol on the planet. Because for me, alcohol, if you watch that episode about my beef with alcohol consumers, you will know that why the fuck would we want to be around distorted liabilities? Distorted liabilities, which is what you become when you consume alcohol, distorted liabilities are going to increase the probability of us incurring some cost. When you hang out with distorted liabilities, people who don't have all of their mental faculties in check or under control, stupid things happen. And you and I can get caught up, even if we are sober and we don't drink, we can get caught up in the stupidity, in the distorted actions of other people who consume alcohol. So yes, would I like St. Patrick's Day to revolve around the consumption of apple juice? Well, yes, for me, that's what I would prefer, because I don't want a whole bunch of distorted liabilities out driving cars, out walking around, because when you are a distorted liability, you become unpredictable. Your behavior becomes erratic. And who wants that? Who wants to be around people who are erratic, unpredictable, aggressive at times, can't see logic, quick to irritation? Maybe they fall asleep at a crucial moment when they shouldn't fall asleep, like when they are driving a vehicle. Who wants to be around distorted liabilities? Well, I think if we answer honestly, nobody does. Because distorted liabilities, one way or another, they are going to increase the likelihood that we suffer some cost by being in their presence. Because they are unpredictable and erratic. And I don't know about you, but I don't like being around people who are unpredictable and erratic, quick to a temper, aggressive, and who aren't able to see the world through a logical lens. Not for me, not my cup of cha. So yes, St. Patrick's Day. Would it be great for old Bandido here if everybody, like the Bandido, was just consuming apple juice? And everybody had their wits about them, and everybody was reasonable, everybody was seeing the world in a rational, logical way? Would that be my ideal scenario? Yes. But fuck me, folks. We don't live in this utopia. I understand that there are some things that I agree with, and some things that I'm not that fussed on. And alcohol consumption is one of those things that I'm not fussed on. If I could do away with it, like that, I would. I would just do away with it. Because I think alcohol presents more costs than benefits, to be quite honest with you. But that's not the world I live in, so I'm a realist. I understand, like I said initially at the start of the show. Seldom do you or I agree 100% with anyone or anything. Normally, when we deal with people or we are interacting with something in the world, we should be realistic. We should be realists. We should understand that just because I don't agree 100% with someone or something, that doesn't mean I just throw the entire thing out the window. That would be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That would be an illogical thing to do, because we all don't have to agree 100% with anyone or anything completely. We can have our points of divergence, but if that thing is more of a net benefit than a net cost, or if that person is more of a net benefit than a net cost, then what do we do in this life, folks? We take the rough with the smooth. That's what we do. We basically accept and say, well, you know, this person or this thing, it's a net positive. It's not an absolute positive, but it's a net positive. There are some drawbacks associated with this thing, but when we pan the camera back and we look at this thing through a bird's eye lens, we can see that this person or thing is more of a net benefit. And so we are willing in this life, folks, this is what it means to do business, to negotiate. It means to strike a balance. You may not get exactly what you want out of a negotiation or out of some business interaction, but you may get enough. There may be enough net benefit from striking a deal with this person, this hypothetical business person, that you say, you know what, there are a few things in the agreement that in an ideal world I would prefer not to have in the agreement, but on the whole, on the balance of things, there's more net benefits for me to extract out of this business arrangement. So what do? I shake hands and say, fine, we strike a deal. Perhaps I agree with 80% of it. There's 20% where I'm like, you know, fair enough, to appease the other person, to sort of keep the other person interested. I've had to concede 20% here, but by conceding 20, I get 80. And so that's what life is, folks. Life is about understanding what is effectively a net positive and a net negative. Because as I've said, it's very unusual that you get 100% of everything out of any transaction or interaction. Doesn't happen that often. Normally, there's always going to be a few trade-offs or drawbacks. The question is, those drawbacks or trade-offs, how costly are they? Do they make the overall transaction or interaction a net positive or net negative? And that's what we do in this life, folks. We are looking to essentially, whenever we're doing deals or trying to analyze something, like we're going to do today with St. Patrick's Day, we want to look and say, okay, are there things that Mr. Bandido disagrees with or isn't fully on board with or diverges with when it comes to St. Patrick's Day? Yes, alcohol being one of them, being the principal thing. However, is St. Patrick's Day, because this is the question, we can all have our disagreements and divergences with certain things, but the overall question that we must come back to with any interaction with a person, or in this case, a cultural event, we must always ask ourselves, is it a net positive or a net negative? Do the benefits outweigh the costs? That's what life is, folks. Cost-benefit analysis. Do the benefits outweigh the costs? If the costs outweigh the benefits, then we don't strike the deal. Or we make an argument that this thing, this person, this event, whatever it is not worthwhile. But what happens if the benefits outweigh the costs? Well, one of the costs that comes out of St. Patrick's Day, and this isn't universal, this is just from my perspective. People love alcohol. So there'll be a whole bunch of people listening to this saying, well, what the fuck's the Bandido talking about? I love going out for my drink. That's fine. This show is called Bandido Talks, so it's the Bandido's perspective, not yours. So from my perspective, alcohol is one of the costs that comes out of St. Patrick's Day. One of the costs for me. Because now, tomorrow, when St. Patrick's Day comes around, I'm going to be surrounded by an enormous amount of people who, on a Tuesday, are consuming copious amounts of alcohol. This normally doesn't happen. But tomorrow, I'm going to be surrounded by a whole bunch of distorted liabilities. I would rather if that was not the case in an ideal world. So that's the cost of St. Patrick's Day for me. But why is the title of our show Paddy's Day is a good thing? Why Paddy's Day is good? Why am I saying this? Why am I saying that St. Patrick's Day is a good thing? Even though you know that I don't agree with absolutely everything that surrounds St. Patrick's Day. Clearly, I've done an analysis though. I've done a cost-benefit analysis, exactly like I'm explaining here. I've done a cost-benefit analysis on St. Patrick's Day, and I've weighed up the benefits and I've weighed up the costs. And for me, when I do this analysis, I actually come to the conclusion, which may surprise you, that St. Patrick's Day has more benefits associated with it than costs. You know what the cost is from my perspective, alcohol consumption. So what are the benefits? And that's what our show is essentially getting at today. It's exploring why, from the Bandido's perspective, St. Patrick's Day is a net positive, essentially. Even though there are things I don't agree with surrounding St. Patrick's Day, I think it's a net positive. And I'm going to explain why. Why do I think it's a net positive? Well, this one, folks, is actually quite straightforward, really. And it comes from this idea of the following. We now live in a very global world. We all know this. Technology has allowed us to basically travel everywhere on the planet where there is land and even ocean. So we've got boats, we've got planes, we've got trains, we've got cars, we've got buses. We have pretty much every useful mode of transport that's going to allow us to get to anywhere on the planet. And as citizens of the world, as people of the world, most of us are allowed, if we have the ability, the financial means, most of us are allowed to travel wherever we want. As long as we aren't criminals, as long as we don't have a shady history behind our name, as long as we're not up to any shady shenanigans, in most cases, we can pretty much travel to any location on the planet. And this is a good thing, folks. I'm not saying that the globalization of the world is a bad thing per se. I think it's great that all of us, myself included, we have pretty safe modes of transport. Technology is wonderful in the sense that it has provided us with a means to travel anywhere. For a fairly reasonable price, when you think of how much a plane ticket costs, it's pretty cheap. Pretty cheap. For you, you didn't have to. Did you have to manufacture the plane? Did you need to get an engineering degree or qualification or skill set and create your own plane? No! You didn't have to do any of that. You just get to benefit from the ingenuity and the brilliance of other humans. And then you just have to part with a small amount of money and you get to use marvelous feats of engineering like planes and boats, and you get to travel all over the world. Now, with these modes of transport, this has made the world globally accessible. So globalization in this sense, we've been able to, as humans, colonize the globe. And now, in modern day civilization, 2026, we can travel pretty much wherever we want. And that's a good thing. It's a really good thing. However, what did we talk about just a few minutes ago? There's always going to be cost and there's always going to be benefit to any analysis. The global nature of the world, we can very evidently see the positives or the benefits associated with the world becoming more global. We get to travel to different parts of the world and we get to experience different parts of the world. We get to, in other words, enrich our own lives, whether it's through recreation or business, whatever it is. We have the means to do this. That's a very clear benefit of the world becoming more globally accessible. What are the costs, though? Because there is a big cost. I'm saying a big cost, I mean, it's a big cost. It has become a bigger cost because of, let's just say, some malevolent actors in the world. some malevolent actors are pushing an agenda. We always talk about agendas, folks. And there are some powerful people, rich, powerful people in the world, who have their own agenda, and they may not have your best interests at heart. And while the world becoming more global, globally accessible is a good thing, there's a risk that comes attached to this increasingly accessible nature of the world. Globalism, we could say. This idea of globalism. And why is, when we talk about globalism from the perspective of traveling, say, for example, and the accessibility of all of these different parts of the planet, that's great. But what happens, folks, if we have a few malevolent actors in strong positions of power who are using the more globally accessible nature of the planet to dilute the cultures of all of these different parts of the globe? What happens if this happens? What happens if through our technological innovations like planes and trains and boats, etc., what happens if people from Ghana or Somalia or Sudan, what happens if people from those countries are able to be shipped over to somewhere like Ireland? And what happens if certain malevolent actors start to ship increasing numbers of Ghana migrants or people from Sudan, people from war-torn nations, all of these, what we would call migrants? What happens if certain malevolent actors use the more global nature of the planet, this global network that's now been established? What happens if those people, who may not have your interests or my interests at heart, what happens if those people start to bring large amounts of other people from other cultures into other parts of the world using these modes of transport? Well, what happens if Ireland is a country that has a certain culture, but all of a sudden, instead of 95% of the population in Ireland being Irish, what happens if only 60% of the population in Ireland is Irish and 40% is from somewhere else? What do you think is going to happen to the Irish culture if you start to ship in huge numbers of people from other countries with different religions, different cultures, different worldviews, and they start to increase in number rapidly? Their numbers increase significantly in Ireland, for example, and the native Irish population is actually starting to get, let's say, outcompeted, numbers-wise, by all of these other people from different parts of the world. What happens to Irish culture in this scenario? If the Irish population drops from 95% Irish to 60% Irish to 55% Irish to 50% Irish, and then there's another 50% of people from Sudan and Ghana and Somalia and fuck knows where else, what do you think is going to happen to Irish culture? Do you think Irish culture becomes stronger? Or does it become diluted and weaker? Because what happens when you dilute something? It becomes weaker. If your apple juice that you're drinking on St. Patrick's Day is too strong for you, what do? You dilute it with what? Do you dilute it with more apple juice? No. You take a different substance, in this case, water, and you dilute the apple juice with water. So it's still apple juice, but it's more diluted. It's not as strong. So while the world opening up globally, we could say that globalization or globalism, whatever word you want to use, we can see the benefits. You and I get to benefit from traveling around the world, should we choose. We can go to different parts of the world. But you can see the snag here, because while we have the opportunity to travel, what happens if we start traveling to places wanting to sample different culture, different governments, different legal systems? What happens if we want to move somewhere that has a different religious structure, legal structure, governmental structure? What happens if we want to move somewhere, but what happens if while we are deciding to move, those other cultures and places are becoming more similar to the one that we are leaving? What's the problem here? Can you see the problem? The benefit of globalism, if we want to call it that, is sure, we have access to pretty much all of the globe. But what happens if the globe starts to become more of a homogeneous mass? You know, one of the great things about the world, folks, is the fact that if we're going to think of it like a mass, we like the fact that the world is heterogeneous. We want the world to essentially be diverse. We want other cultures to maintain their cultures. We want other places in the world to have their own unique laws and regulations, to have their own unique government setups. Why would we want this, folks? Why would we want to maintain the cultural diversity across the planet? Why do we not just want the globe to become one big homogeneous mass where everybody's culture becomes a global culture and there's one big global government? Why would we not want that? Why would we not want a big global government? Why would we not want Italy to be like Ireland? Why would we not want Ireland to be like Greece? Why would we not want Greece to be like fucking Turkey? Why is it that we like other cultures to maintain their cultural integrity? Why is it that we like other places on the globe to maintain their own unique approach to setting up government, to setting up rules and regulations? Why do we like this, folks? Well, I'll tell you why we like it. Because it gives us options. If the globe becomes one big homogeneous mass with a global government and it's one big global culture, there's no more unique Irish culture, there's no more unique Italian culture, there's no more unique Greek culture, there's no more unique Turkish culture. If we do away and dilute the cultures of the globe, and we have this big homogeneous mass that we're going to call a global culture, and we are global citizens under a global government, what's the problem with this, folks? I'll repeat myself. The problem is, if we get to that stage, you and I no longer have any options. If we don't like where we are living, then moving somewhere else makes no difference, because the place to which we are moving operates under the same rules as the place that we are currently residing in. This is one of the big things that we talk about here on Bandido Talks, folks. Cultural diversity across the planet is critical because it gives us options. I don't want Turkish culture to become diluted. I don't want Chinese culture to become diluted. I don't want Japanese culture to become diluted. I don't want Irish culture to become diluted. And the reason why I don't is because if all of these other cultures in these other locations of the planet, with their own unique religions and worldviews and governmental approaches and legal systems, if I don't like what's happening in Ireland and all of these other places are maintaining their own cultural integrity, you know what I can do? I can decide to move. This is the beauty, folks, of maintaining cultural diversity across the planet and not diluting all of these cultures through essentially bringing in other people to dilute the native culture. If we become one big global homogeneous mass, you and I are out of options. We have nowhere to run. Do you have a rocket to take you up into space and go to another planet? No, you don't. And so, while globalism, we could say, has provided some benefits that are very clear, if certain malevolent actors had their way, they would have all of these cultures across the planet, in all of these different countries, they would have these cultures diluted to the point where all the colours bleed into one. You know the way that U2 song, I still haven't found what I'm looking for? In the third verse, Bono sings, I believe in the kingdom come. Then all the colours, they will bleed into one. I don't want the colours to bleed into one. Because if the colours bleed into one, that means we've only got one colour. In other words, it's a uniform, homogeneous mass. I don't want the colours to bleed into one. I want there to be lots of colours on the planet, because the more colours there are, in other words, the more cultures that remain intact, the more options I have. If I decide that I don't like what Ireland is offering me anymore, then that means I can survey the market. I can survey the global market. I can say, okay, well, I want to live my life a certain way, and let's say Ireland starts to do things that I think, you know what, I don't like this. No, I don't like this. This isn't in accordance with how I want to live my life. So what can I do? If the world maintains its cultural integrity, and there's lots of diversity and colours in the world, then you know what I can do? I can do my due diligence, I can survey the marketplace, and I can find a country that aligns with what it is I want to get out of this life. That's a good thing, folks. You don't want to do away with what makes a culture unique. Because if you do away with what makes a culture unique, you have no more options. If all cultures are diluted, and we then just have one option, which is the global culture, you and I are fucked. And we're fucked because we have no options left. There's only one way to play life now. And there's only one set of rules that we can abide by. And if we don't abide by those set of rules, we are cooked. And so this is why I say, as the title of the show, Paddy's Day is a good thing. I don't give a shit if you're a fucking Muslim, a Protestant, or whatever. I don't care. You should be looking at St. Patrick's Day and thinking, you know what? Fair enough. St. Patrick's Day may not be my culture. If I'm a Muslim, you know, Paddy's Day isn't exactly what you would associate with Muslims. Not exactly. Given that alcohol, as a Muslim, is not something that you're supposed to be consuming. And Paddy's Day is all about getting into the pub and celebrating using alcohol. Even if you're a Muslim, you may not agree with Paddy's Day. What did I say at the beginning, folks? I don't agree with everything associated with St. Patrick's Day. People going around drunk, like distorted liabilities. Sometimes people will play really loud music at inappropriate times that might piss me off. Yeah, sure, there are costs associated, but if I'm a Muslim, or I'm a Protestant, or I'm some other person with, oh, I don't know, Willie Schwindler's viewpoint of the world. Let's say, you know, there's a religion out there and the Messiah is called Willie Schwindler. You know, if I follow Willie Schwindler, and let's say Willie Schwindler's fucking approach to life is very much at odds with what you see happening during St. Patrick's Day. Even if I'm a Willie Schwindler follower, I should still look at St. Patrick's Day and say, you know what? Maybe what people do on St. Patrick's Day, maybe it's not my cup of tea. It's not in accordance with, it doesn't agree with all of my values. But you know what? It's fucking Irish. It's a thing that is completely Irish. It encapsulates what Ireland is all about. It's unique to being Irish. There will be places all over the world will celebrate St. Patrick's Day. And when people celebrate St. Patrick's Day, what country is St. Patrick's Day most closely associated with? Ireland. It's one of those things that the Irish do. It's a bit like hurling or Gaelic football. It's a unique sport to Ireland. Do I want, St. Patrick's Day to be abolished? Fuck no. It's what makes Ireland, Ireland. It's a part of what makes Ireland, Ireland. It's a part of what it means to be Irish. So even though, sure, do I like the fact that, there's a whole bunch of alcohol being consumed and there are a whole bunch of distorted liabilities walking around me and driving around me? No. That's one of the costs associated from my perspective of St. Patrick's Day. But folks, don't lose the run of yourself. Be careful what you wish for. If you're a Muslim or a Protestant or a Jew or some other person who maybe is losing the run of themselves and you see something like St. Patrick's Day and you think, what's the point in this? Always remember, if you don't like St. Patrick's Day, you don't have to get involved in it. You don't have to go to Ireland and celebrate St. Patrick's Day. If St. Patrick's Day is happening in your town or city, you don't have to get involved. It'll all be over in one day. And then you'll have whatever it is, 364 more days to wait until it comes around again. Whoop-de-doo. If you don't want to get involved, you can avoid it. But don't lose the run of yourself. Cultures have costs and benefits, like anything. Some cultures, people disagree with certain aspects of them. But you know what? I'm able to pan the camera back. I'm enough of a realist to say, you know what? I'm never going to agree 100% with everyone or any particular event or thing in this world. There will always be things that I will diverge, that will cause, there will be a divergence between my worldview and this thing or this person. That's normal and natural. You wouldn't be human if there wasn't some differences between what you think and what I think. And what you think about St. Patrick's Day and what I think about St. Patrick's Day. That's fine. It's part of being human. We all have our own individual differences and preferences. That's fine. But I go back to what I've said earlier. When you're looking at someone or something and you're engaged in some process or transaction or interaction, you should always ask yourself, ultimately, you should run your cost-benefit analysis and you should say, is this a net positive or a net negative? St. Patrick's Day is unquestionably, for me, a net positive because it's a very vibrant expression of Irish culture. It's one of these things that makes Ireland what it is. And I would never want St. Patrick's Day to be abolished from the calendar. Even though I have my own, reservations with certain aspects of it, I would never want it abolished. And it's the exact same with any St. Patrick's Day equivalent in fucking Turkey, China, Japan, Sudan, Somalia. I don't care. I want there to be lots of diversity across the planet. And you know what I don't want? I don't want other cultures being merged together so that they are diluted. I don't want there to be a dilution of culture. I don't want there to be a dilution across the planet of all of this diversity in culture that we have in all of these different countries. I don't want there to be a global culture where we are global citizens. I don't want that. You know what I want? I want options. That's what I want. I want there to be an open marketplace. And I want each country or each island or each plot of land on this planet, I want all of those countries, islands, and plots of land to present to me what it is that they can offer to me. And then you know what I want to do? I want to have the option to analyze what it is. What is their value proposition? What is their culture? What is their government setup? What are their laws and regulations? What are their religious beliefs? I want to analyze what it is that they are presenting to me. And then I want to have the option to say, you know what? I'm going to move there, or no, I'm going to pass and I'm going to analyze this next option. That's what I want. I want options. And for me to have options, I need to ensure that cultures are not diluted. I need to ensure that there is diversity across the planet in terms of the marketplace. I want diversity within the marketplace. It's like anything, folks. Competition's good. I don't want there to be just one big homogenous mass before me. I don't want there to be just one option for me to choose from. Oh no, I don't want that at all. Because that now puts me in a position of weakness. I've nowhere to turn. I'm stuck. If the world is just the same everywhere, if Ireland is the same as Japan, and Japan is the same as the United States of America, and the United States of America is the same as fucking Cuba, I've no options, neither do you. And St. Patrick's Day is going to take place tomorrow on March the 17th, and I'm glad that it does, because St. Patrick's Day is something that symbolises Irish culture. Whether I agree with all of the activities that take place during St. Patrick's Day is a different discussion. One that I've already had in my beef with alcohol consumers. But I would never, ever want to do away with St. Patrick's Day, or any of these things that make a culture or a country unique. I want the marketplace to be competitive. I want a whole bunch of different countries to be competing for me, for my attention, for my resources. I want these countries to present what it is that they have to offer. Their religion, their financial setup, their government setup, their rules, regulations, laws, all of this, their way of life, their citizens, their food, their climate. I want to see all of this. And then I want to be in a position where I can choose the culture that I want to live in. But you see, if we start to do away with things like St. Patrick's Day, you know what starts to happen, folks? We start to move closer. We inch our way closer to that big homogenous global mass where you and I no longer have any options. And we are now having to essentially be forced into following one set of rules, regulations, and everything else that comes with them. So that's the reason why I support St. Patrick's Day. That's the reason why I see St. Patrick's Day as a good thing. It shows what Irish culture is. I don't want Irish culture to be diluted. I don't want British culture to be diluted. I don't want French culture to be diluted. I want these parts of the globe to stay and maintain the integrity of what it is that they represent. I don't want some big body full of malevolent actors to start merging all these places together. I don't want some big overarching body here full of malevolent actors to start blending together Spain, France, Ireland, Finland, the United States, Cuba, Chile. I don't want someone to come along and start unifying multiculturalism. I don't want that, because that is what Bono is singing about, and I still haven't found what I'm looking for. I believe in the kingdom come, then all the colors, they will bleed into one. I don't want the colors to bleed into one. No, thank you. I want there to be a full palette of colors. And then I want to have the option to choose what color that I'm going to make my bandana. I want to choose what color I'm going to use to paint my house. I don't want to go into the shop and see only, I don't know, yellow bandanas, yellow paint, I don't want the world to be just covered in yellow. Oh, do you want some carrots? Yeah, I'd like some carrots. Oh, they're yellow carrots. Yeah, I would like a bit of broccoli there. Oh, only yellow broccoli? Well, could I get some... Could I get some watermelon? Only yellow watermelon? I don't want the world to be yellow. I don't want to only see the world using the colour yellow as an example. I don't want my lens. I don't want to have a yellow coloured lens and no option to sample all the other colours in this world. I want to see all the colours. I want to be able to choose the colour of choice for me. And so, with that, folks, that's why I support St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day is a certain colour that comes from Irish culture. I don't want Irish culture to be diluted. I don't want any culture across the planet to be diluted because I want options. Options are what give me an advantageous, or it gives me, let's just say, an advantage in this life. It allows me to pivot. It allows me to form a plan and say, you know what? If I don't like what's being offered in this part of the world, I can go here. And this part of the world aligns more closely with what it is that I'm looking from this life. If we dilute all cultures and we just get a global culture and all the colours bleed into one, we no longer have options, folks. And when you're out of options, you're in a position of weakness. And let's just remember that, folks. You may disagree with certain things, certain religions, certain activities in certain countries. That's fine. But always remember, it's good to have options. It's good that the marketplace in terms of countries is competitive. I want countries to be offering different things and trying to present themselves in a way that appeals to me. I want to have that option to go to a place that appeals to me. So anyway, that's the splurge on St. Patrick's Day. Let's have a look at the live chat. See if there's anybody in there. Let's have a look here. See if we have anybody in the live chat. Let's have a look and see. Get over to the old Google, or not Google, YouTube studio. But your YouTube is now owned by Google, isn't it? But anyway, let's have a look and see. We do have one live chat, actually. And it's from Quiz22. Let's see what Quiz22 has to say. He says the following. Big agreement from me, Mr. Bandido. Countries identify should matter. Otherwise, we are just economic zones. Well, what can I say? Quiz is in agreement, and I'm in agreement with Quiz. A country's identity should matter. Otherwise, as he's just said, is Quiz a man or a woman? I'm going to assume Quiz is a male. Is Quiz a male? Is it a female? Is it a different entity? We'll say Quiz. He thinks that economic zones would be the end result if we just have this big global homogeneous mass. And he agrees. And you know, that's the thing, folks. You don't want, as I've already said, you don't want to allow, this is why the start of the show is very important, that you understand this idea of agreement and disagreement. All of us are never going to agree on absolutely everything. And that's not a criticism, folks. That shows that you're a normal functioning human. That's good. Always, folks, the big broad lesson from this is always when you're analysing something, don't allow a 10% disagreement to allow you to throw the 90% of good stuff out the window or down the drain with the bathwater. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And that's why it's important to understand what I'm saying at the beginning of the show, because it essentially sets the stage for what it is that we're talking about here. And Quiz is right. You know, otherwise we are just economic zones. And what happens if that were to happen? What does that mean? I keep on saying it's putting us, you and I, in a position of weakness. Why does this put us in a position of weakness? Because, folks, you are easier to control, manipulate, and exploit. You hear those three words every time whenever I'm coming on here to the show. Control, manipulate, and exploit. That is why you want to have options. If you have options in life with anything, it makes it more difficult to control, manipulate, and exploit you. And if we just become economic zones, if we become one big global mass, homogeneous mass, well, whether you or I like it or not, it's easier to control us, it's easier to manipulate us, and then ultimately exploit us. So you want options, and Quiz seems to be saying the same thing. Quiz is in agreement. That seems to be, though, our only live chat. Let me just make sure that I haven't missed any. Let's see. That seems to be everything, folks. And so that draws our show to a close. Go and enjoy your St. Patrick's Day, folks. Look, I'm never going to be on board with alcohol consumption. But if it's your thing, it's your thing. I have a beef with alcohol consumers. It doesn't make you a bad person if you consume alcohol. For our show, you can see, if I have such a problem with St. Patrick's Day and people in Ireland who like to drink, then you know what I can do? I can piss off to some other country. And you would be quite within your rights to say, you know what, Mr. Bandido, if you have such a problem with alcohol consumers and people, you know, enjoying themselves in pubs here in Ireland, then how about you piss off somewhere else? And you're right. That's the thing. You're absolutely right. The way the world is currently set up, I still have options. And you also want to have options as well. So anyway, a very good show indeed, folks. I'm going to say again, feel free, well, I'm saying again, I'm getting into the habit of giving you your little reminder here at the end of the show to give us a thumbs up, hit the like button if you like what we were talking about here on the stream. Again, get down into the comments section. Let me know what you thought about our show. Are you in agreement like Quiz22? Are you in disagreement? Part agreement, part disagreement? Let me know down in the comments below. And then finally, folks, if you like in general what we do here at Bandido Talks, then feel free to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. We are live every week on Universal Bandido Time, UBT, which means the Bandido does his live shows when he wants, at the time he wants to do them. So you're going to have to subscribe to get notifications about when the Bandido is going to be going live, and when there are new uploads to the channel. My goodness me, 2 riffs in a row. So you're going to have to subscribe, folks. We've got a new little series out, Lessons in Nature. I've been enjoying doing those. We get out into nature, we get out of the studio. Of course, we've got our case studies. We're going to have some more new content dropping your direction as well. So subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. You'll be notified of all live shows, all video uploads. And then finally, folks, use the scrolling black banner below to direct yourself over to Rumble. Bandido Talks is also active over on Rumble. We do different shows on YouTube compared to Rumble. So I would encourage you to use that scrolling black banner below, direct yourself over to Rumble after our live show here, subscribe to the channel over there because our live shows are completely different. Over on Rumble, we tend to talk more about US politics. It's more political. And it's more US-based stories. So if you want more political stuff, more US-based commentary, then head over to Rumble, Bandido Talks on Rumble. You can follow our live shows over there as well. So that's about it from me, folks. Subscribe here on YouTube. Subscribe over on Rumble. Check out Bandido Talks on X as well. I'm starting to do little written commentary on X as well. If you're more interested in the written word, You'll find all of those details below on that scrolling black banner. That's everything from me, folks. Enjoy your St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. Don't become too much of a distorted liability. But enjoy your day tomorrow. Enjoy the celebrations. Enjoy doing something that is quintessentially Irish. Embrace the Irish culture if that's your thing. If St. Patrick's Day isn't necessarily your cup of tea, then you know what? Sit back and realise, folks, that St. Patrick's Day is actually doing you a favour. Even if you have a different culture and a different set of beliefs and values, it's doing you a favour. It's still giving you options, and it's keeping the world nice and competitive, culturally open. And that's a good thing for you and I. So anyway, folks, enjoy tomorrow, enjoy the rest of your day. And with all of that said, folks, it is over and out this afternoon on YouTube from the Bandido.